Eric, thank you for being on the Courage of a Leader podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have. You talked with me about your transition out of the Marine Corps and the lessons that you learned that have helped you become a more effective leader. So, to start this conversation, Eric, will you tell us about who you were and how you operated when you were in the Marines?
It's interesting. I got promoted relatively quickly at a young age, and I think that's very typical for for the services. You have people that obtain rank and maybe 19 or 20, and they've got a few people under them. Um, I think I came into the service with sort of a perception of what leadership was. I didn't have a lot of confidence in a teen as a teenager, which drove me into it.
Okay.
Um, and in the Marine Corps, you see a couple of different styles of leadership, and certainly the first experience that everybody has is boot camp, where it's just about barking and uh,
Mm,
commands and demands, um, and that I think resonated with me in terms of that's what I thought leadership was,
ah,
uh, which was really interesting. And then when I got out into the Marine Corps after graduating boot camp and still being at a relatively low rank, it was still how most of the people immediately senior to me operated. Um, so I sort of kept with that.
okay.
As I got promoted, I did not necessarily mature with that, and I sort of held, and I didn't evolve. I think in my role working in intelligence, I had exposure. I was enlisted, and I had exposure to a lot of the officers who operated in a very different way
Okay.
um, amongst themselves, and with the people that they led. Uh, and I don't necessarily, while I always admired it, um, I didn't necessarily have the confidence to sort of incorporate it.
Yeah.
So I never really, I think it wasn't until there was just a very pivotal moment um, in my Marine Corps career where I got called out for my behavior and my awful style of leadership. And it probably wasn't until then that I really began to adjust how I interact with people and the style of leader that um, I wanted to become and hopefully eventually became.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about that getting called out? Either what you took away from that conversation, what was the impetus for, okay, I hear you, I'm gonna make a change here.
I think it was that my life was in jeopardy.
Okay.
Quite honestly, it really came down to that. We had gone to the Philippines, or we were heading to the Philippines, a small contingent, and there was a gunnery sergeant who I just had the utmost admiration, respect. He was probably 20 years older than me.
Okay.
And so, he may have been 38 years old. He was like a father.
Okay.
And everybody just loved this guy. And he took me aside one day and he said, "We're heading to the Philippines." He's like, "If you continue this," he's like, "when you get off base, I can't promise you you're coming back." He's like, "These guys want to absolutely just beat you."
Mhm.
Um, he said, "You've got a couple of weeks to really begin to clean up your act and learn to lead." Uh,
Mhm.
and he said it needs to happen immediately because I can't vouch for your safety there.
Ooh,
Um, that was really frightening.
of
That
course.
was really, really scary.
Of course.
And that I would say was one of the most, I think, singularly pivotal moments in my life. Uh,
Yeah.
realizing how bad a leader I was.
Mm.
It was
Yeah. Uh, what did you try? How did you change?
part of being in the service is rank, and there's respect that comes with rank. I was still a relatively young non-commissioned officer, so it wasn't like I was commanding respect by virtue of my rank. Um, And I really didn't know how to get respect um,
Mhm.
at that point. But plenty of there were plenty of people that were much senior to me that I saw how they operated. It was certainly the kind of leader I wanted to be, but I didn't have the self-confidence to emulate that style and still think I would be effective and
Ah,
achieve what I wanted to achieve. I just didn't have the maturity.
yeah.
Um, but I really quickly learned to try to adapt some of those skills and to be much softer around the edges as many of the officers and senior non-commissioned people were, and see if I could adopt that, as sort of part of my demeanor and my style of leadership without sacrificing the ability to get things done the way I need to be, or you know my own my own self-perception of being weak.
Mm,
um there's a machismo that when you're in the military that you need to behave a certain way,
yeah.
and by not personifying that, um what is the perception of others have you? And again, my own immaturity at that time is what was my perception of myself. I remember very clearly that moment that he took me aside and the emotional struggles that I had with trying to evolve into that person in a very swift manner and still be
Yeah.
effective.
I really appreciate your willingness to share this story with us in this way, Eric, and talking about the confidence. I have leaders every day, Eric, who are telling me, I feel like I have imposter syndrome, right? I'm not confident, right? I feel like job is beyond my capabilities at times. We get promoted throughout our career and we often feel like, okay, I'm making this up. I'm faking it until I make it. And I think the lesson for us all, I think the opportunity is for all of us to look when we feel that lack of confidence, when we feel like, oh, this is stretching me a little bit beyond my boundaries here. Take a look, right? What is that having us do as a leader?
Right.
Are we acting in the most empowering and engaging ways in those times? And it's tough, right? It takes courage to be able to look. And all of us are probably not going to have the exchange that you had, right? The opportunity where someone's going to say, hey, I'm going to point this out to you. Your safety is at risk here,
Right.
right? Or whatever is at
Yeah.
risk. Your team results, your reputation, the respect of your team members is at risk here. You need to make a change, right? Those kinds of candid conversations don't always come our way.
By virtue of having somebody that cared for me enough, not only as a person, but to see me evolve as a better leader, to take me aside and tell me. And it really changed the rest of my experience in the Marine Corps because I didn't realize how much I had isolated myself and how few
Mhm.
friends I had. It was nice to have that camaraderie, and not sort of live on an island.
Yeah, yeah. That's part of what's possible, right? When we have a more participatory, empowering leadership style. What can you tell us about those next 3 weeks and going to the Philippines, about your leadership and what might benefit our listeners?
I wound up coming out of that experience with two really good friends. I mean, guys that I knew and, would hang out there, hang out prior. Um, but it was it was an opportunity that I think they saw me in a different light. They became two of my, closest friends while, I was in the service. And I had a fantastic time there. I was really able to enjoy it and, you know, take part in all the things without worrying about whether, one, to do it alone, because there wasn't really anybody that would have wanted to hang out with me before. And then, two, I guess, just to have a really good time. And again, have that camaraderie where I'm not, on the outside looking in. Uh,
Yeah.
And one of the guys we still stay in touch. He was in Chicago maybe 2 years ago, and
Nice.
it's fantastic. It's really nice to have to have those bonds.
Yeah, it creates true connection. So as I'm listening to you, Eric, I'm making the assumption that the shift in your leadership was more about stopping some behaviors. It was stopping the commands, the demands, the leaning into the authority.
Oh, absolutely. I was, I had I don't know, like a Napoleon complex
Mm,
kind of thing. I was rigid. I was unapproachable. Um, you know, there wasn't anything to like about me.
ah, all right.
So it was allowing, I think, my true self to come out and not hide behind this persona of what, again, I thought a leader was or what I wanted to be, or,
Yeah.
what, know, wanted to be more macho and more tough and something that I am innately not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's a very human tendency. We talk about this in a number of leadership programs that I do. You use the word persona, Eric, and so many of us do put a persona forward, especially in those areas where we're not as mature in our leadership, where we might not have as much confidence, right? I'm going to show up as the smart person, right? I'm going to be everybody's friend person, like whatever it might be rather than showing up as our true selves and
Right.
letting people see that and everything that's great and not so great
Yeah.
about that because we're human beings.
100% is I had adopted a persona that wasn't me. It wasn't authentic.
Mm,
Um, and it showed through.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
was obvious.
Yeah. We're going to get into the rest of the story, Eric. Let me pause for a moment here and tell listeners more about you. It was in 1986 when Eric Lazar decided to forego acceptance into several universities and enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps. We've been hearing about this. He served as an intelligence specialist with both a Combat Engineer Battalion and an Electronic Warfare. Oh my goodness, Eric. Battalion and
And
Warfare.
Warfare Squadron.
That's what I'm trying to say. Eric served as an intelligence specialist with both a combat engineer battalion and an electronic warfare squadron with 2 overseas deployments. Eric's transition into the private sector was fraught with challenges, unable to find his calling, a sense of purpose, or adapting to the culture of a corporate environment. In the years that followed, Eric pursued 3 different entrepreneurial ventures and held a number of corporate sales positions, creating in each role an impressive track record of driving growth. Eric's third and current entrepreneurial effort is SpeedPro Chicago. SpeedPro specializes in large format digital printing. Their client roster is broad, partnering with renowned brands that include Live Nation, Salesforce, and the Obama Foundation. SpeedPro is dedicated to being a great corporate citizen, donating a minimum of 1% of proceeds in the way of product and services to charitable organizations, and is the winner of the International Franchise Association's 2022 Franchisee of the Year, Inc. magazine's list of fastest growing companies in the Midwest, as well as the only 2-time Project of the Year winner. Eric is a past president of the SpeedPro Imaging National Franchising Advisory Council and sits on boards and in leadership roles for several veteran organizations that include Project Relo and Chicago Marines Foundation. Thank you for being here today, Eric, and thank you for the ways that you continue to serve in our world.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was a very nice introduction.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Um, so Eric, if we don't have a gunnery sergeant who comes and has a candid conversation with us, how do we catch ourselves? What would you have gone back and told yourself or asked yourself?
What do you do without a gunnery sergeant? As you evolve as a person, your social and emotional intelligence increases,
Yeah.
and you can get those cues from those around you. While that was a transformative moment for me, it's not like I haven't had setbacks. Um, and I remember having one probably in my early 40s. I was stationed or based in a client's office here in Chicago. Um, or I was their client, I should say. So
Okay.
I was their client. I was based in their office. This is back when I was in television. I had properties or television, TV stations that I represented in
Yep.
Milwaukee, Oklahoma City, and Cincinnati and Minneapolis, but I lived here, and so I was allowed to work out of basically our rep firm's office. Um, I was pretty awful to a lot of the people there too. I reverted back to old behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I had the VP of the office take me aside one day, and he's basically said, "I don't care if you're a client." He's like, "I'm going to kick your ass out of here. Is you need to change how you communicate, how you deal with, how you operate with my people. Your behavior is absolutely unacceptable." I think when I am fearful, um,
Mm-hmm.
and the pressure is on, and I
Yep.
need to, whatever sort of, hit my goals and my objectives and whatever it might be, um, I
Mm-hmm.
could have a tendency to revert to behavior that is, it just something that I'm not proud of.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't think I've really had any relapses of any significance since then.
Good, good. Yeah.
And it's something that I try to be very conscious of. I need to be aware, and so I try to be very, conscious of what's going on around me, how people are reacting.
Yes.
Are they rolling their eyes? Are they walking away from me? Do they constantly seem annoyed? Um, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's just,
Yeah.
I have to do it for myself, in this role. I mean, I'm also fortunate that I have a business partner, who actually, I know her from back in the days of television when I was in that office as,
Okay.
a difficult person.
Okay.
So I'm very grateful for her.
Okay.
And I don't think she's found any reason to say that I've been out of whack in the last 9 years since having this business. But, I think it's amazing given her experience with me then, that she would have taken the chance to leave,
Mm-hmm.
taken the chance and left there,
Mm-hmm.
to join me on this.
Well, you've obviously shown her other sides of Eric, and I can't thank you enough for your candor. And this is a very human tendency. This is why, with so many assessments like DISC or Myers-Briggs, it talks about what do we revert to when we're under pressure, right? If we really want to take an honest look at our behavior across the spectrum, take a look at how do we show up when the pressure is on, when we're feeling fearful, where there's a looming deadline, when there's pressures coming from different uh, people, different directions, when we feel like our capabilities and our resources are not enough to handle what's going on, when we're stressed, right? How are we operating?
And that's when it counts the most.
That's probably when the people around you are stressed and under
Right.
pressure, right? And need that leadership. And what kind of leadership are we giving them? And I think your advice, Eric, to look at your emotional intelligence, right? What are you picking up from the people around you is so wise. Right. How are we reflecting on our day to day? Are we thinking about like what were the reactions when I shared that in the meeting? Solicit feedback.
That's what I was going to say is,
Yeah.
having that upward feedback is
Nice.
creating that environment that it's safe for people to give you honest, constructive criticism without fear of retribution. I've found that very, very helpful. Um, that I don't think there's anybody that, has worked with me for the last, since I've had this, that has any fear that there's going to be some sort of retaliatory action for being honest with me. And I think and it goes both ways. It also allows me to have difficult conversations, which I really don't like having.
Sure.
But learning to do it in a soft, respectful manner, and that it's mutual.
Yeah.
And that's really helpful. I think that's what's created the environment that I have now,
Yeah.
um, which
Yeah.
is nice. And I think in return, it's like I'm very loyal to the people that are working with me, and I think they're very loyal to me.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that's very, very hard to achieve.
Yes.
For me, it's always been a struggle for me. Um, so
Yeah,
I
no,
I feel
you are not alone in that, right? And that, I mean, that means everything. I mean, it's one of the strongest engagement factors, right? When people feel loyal, they feel safe. I can show up, I can give feedback, I can share my ideas, right? Others are going to have my back. That safety is one of the strongest indicators of engaged employees. And when they're engaged, then there's higher performance, then there's better
right.
results.
The one of the things that I try to strongly reiterate is that it's a safe environment.
Mm,
Because I've worked in places that weren't safe environments. Whether it was, I mean, my experience with what happened in the Marine Corps, extreme. So I'm not talking about physical safety, but emotional safety. I think that's super critical. And that's what I try to reiterate is like, this is a safe environment. This is a place that you can come. Sometimes people just need an outlet and they do need, they need somebody that's going to lend an empathetic, compassionate ear. And people are going to have bad days, and as long as that's not a consistent hindrance to performance, because we're all there to achieve a mission. um
yeah,
it should be safe to have your off day,
yeah,
um with because we all have them.
yeah, yeah. I'm hearing, how do we create a safe environment? You empathy, compassion, just that commitment to having a safe environment, right? Letting people be human. I'd like to double click on it a little bit more, Eric, and ask you, how do you, right? As the top person in Speed Pro, like how are you getting feedback? Because I can hear some listeners wondering, like, yeah, like I think I'm a great boss and I asked for feedback and I'm not sure I'm getting it. Like there's sometimes there are just those folks that it really takes something for them to open up to someone who is senior to them.
Well,
Any advice for us
yeah.
there?
Well, we're a small organization.
Okay.
There are six of us, so
Okay.
it's very, and we will go between six and seven, maybe sometimes eight, depending, just where we're at. Um, but it's a small nuclear family. So it's not, you know,
Hmm.
we've got an open door. I mean, literally, it's like my business partner and I sit in an office together. It's a
Uh,
12 by 17 office with a desk against the wall, and we both sit in there. The door is always open. People can always come in, and we're both walking around. It's like, and not supervising, but making ourselves available.
yeah.
It could be simply quality assurance, putting a second set of eyes on things,
Yeah.
asking what's going on. Do we
Yeah.
need help prioritizing?
Yeah.
Whatever it might be. And in the course of doing that and making ourselves available, is if somebody's got a gripe or if there's an issue, they're going to say it.
Great.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's like, we need this kind of additional support, or
Yeah.
this is a problem, or, you know, Rebecca, who's my business partner, Rebecca's telling me one thing that this is a priority. You're telling me another thing this is priority. What the hell do I do and who do I listen to?
Yeah.
Um, those are all things that they feel, I think, very comfortable in saying, like, hey, can you guys get aligned?
Yeah.
Because we're getting mixed messages. I think it's just that level of availability to people that
Yes.
We don't, I mean, we physically don't keep the door closed unless we're on a call and we just need to block out the sounds of the machines.
Yeah.
Um, Short of that, walk in if you got to walk in. And
Nice.
if not, you'll see me in 15 minutes walking the floor of the shop and
Yes.
we're there. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, this is an invitation to all the leaders listening. How do you make yourself available? Right? They might not be in the situation that you are, where there's an office and everybody's, in the same building. But how do you make yourself available? Are you picking up when they're calling you on a Teams call? Are you reaching out and asking questions about how's it going?
yeah, I mean, there are certain things that we do. It's like we buy lunch pretty frequently and more
Yes.
than just once a week. It's a chance that we're throwing a bunch of pizzas on the production table. I mean, just simple little things like that,
Yeah.
that naturally just bring you together, even if it's for 15 minutes. One of the people that works with us, she doesn't have a car. It's relatively on my way home. So I try to make a point to either pick her up in the morning if I'm not coming in significantly earlier, or drop her home at night. It's an opportunity for us to spend 10 minutes in the car.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Um, so, we look for all those little ways to just have a little bit extra connection that if somebody
Yeah.
wants to say something, they've got the opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. How do we increase those connections? How do we increase those interactions? Yeah, because then we learn about what's going on. And if, oh gosh, that's it. That's not working as smoothly as we might
Right.
anticipate that working. What's going on here? Tell me about it. Any ideas how we can address that? Yeah, creating those informal interactions.
That's where a lot of the
Connected
best
learn.
conversations happen. When people are with their peers, their words become more measured. Um, so trying to find those one-on-one opportunities where it's a more casual setting,
Yeah.
people tend to loosen up. My nature is to joke and tease. I'm very sarcastic, and I love to joke and tease. I think, allowing myself to do that with people, um, I think also creates, a feeling of comfort, a feeling of
Yeah.
safety. Um, and it's funny, it's an opportunity when people also, when they feel comfortable and they are sarcastic, a lot of funny things come out in sarcasm. People sort of say what they want that they wouldn't say if they were measuring their words. Um,
Mm,
and it's a really good opportunity when they play back into it to find out what they're really thinking. I don't use
okay.
it as a tool, but it's an interesting aftermath or result
Okay.
of doing
Yeah.
that sometimes I get some really good insights into who I am when they tease back.
Got it. Got it. No, I hear that that is about you being yourself,
Right.
right? And there can be those moments where there's a sarcastic comment and you're like, "Oh, I think there's something there." Like
Exactly.
let's pay attention to that, you know?
And it's good because if they're comfortable, if that's the way that they're comfortable expressing it, as long as I am open to hearing it and I don't take offense, I mean, listen, there's always a point that it's like, okay, that crossed the line. Not that I've had that, but it could go there, and you don't want to create an environment that allows people to feel like they can say absolutely anything. And nor should I, be able to say absolutely anything in return. But it does create I think it does create an environment where maybe that again, if they're more concerned about measuring their words, this gives them a little bit of flexibility and freedom to say the things that they might not have otherwise. And it probably doesn't work for every leader. It works for me.
Mhm.
But most of the time, the sort of the teasing and joking just go to creating a more fun, relaxing environment.
Yeah, those informal
Yeah.
interactions. Yeah. Eric, this time went by so quickly. Thank
Are
you
we done?
thank you for
No.
sharing with us very candidly your leadership journey. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.